Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 30 of the Rickenbacker 620 12-string build. And in this episode, we're going to continue working on the fretboard, but also we're going to be making some tools that hopefully will make our fretting job just that little bit easier. So in the last episode, we got the fretboard finally glued onto the neck and all cleaned up, and it is looking very nice and swish. So really happy with that, but we have got a couple of things that we need to sort out. Firstly, we've got the little cocktail sticks that we put in the frets that obviously are going to stop the fret from going in. So we need to clean those up and get that fret slot reinstalled, which is a little bit of a problem because we got binding on the neck. And also because we got binding on the neck, we won't be able to just knock the frets in. Once we've got them cut to length, we're going to have to actually notch the tang on them. Now, when I've done this job in the past, I've notched the tang with a file, and it's a pain and it takes forever. So I want to see if I can find a quicker way of doing that. And there are actually a lot of tools out there available to help you do that. And inevitably, StewMac do a set of these. However, StewMac's prices aren't really my cup of tea. So if I can do something a little bit cheaper, I will do. And to that end, a few months ago, another member of the guitar building community, Anthony over at 4th Avenue Guitars, actually put a video out, which I'll put a link to in my description, where he actually modified a set of relatively cheap sheet metal nibblers to work in exactly the same fashion as the StewMac fret tang nipper. And while it wasn't an easy job to do, and he said that there were some issues with doing it, it did work. And it was fairly cheap. And so to that end, I've gone and bought myself a set of these, and I'm going to do the same modification to them so that I can easily and quickly nip these tangs. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this. If you want to see exactly how it's done, I will put the link in the description so you can go to Anthony's video and see how the master did it. But I will kind of quickly skim over what I'm going to do. So I'll get the guitar out of the way and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail. Now, these nibblers work quite simply. This tooth that sticks out the top has an angled cut on it, and as you push the handles together, it's pulled into the body, and anything that's caught between it and this little bed here will get nibbled. However, there isn't a great deal of room on here to get a fret in. You could just about do it, but it'd be very awkward. So what StewMac have done is they've actually turned this tooth around and they've cut the slot that you need for the fret wire to go into in the middle of this little plate. And that's what Anthony did when he did the modification to his. So that's what I've got to do. I've basically got to take this brand new pair of nibblers completely to pieces, flip that tooth round, cut a slot in that bed, put it all back together again, and hopefully we will have a set of nippers that work, if not perfectly, at least adequately. And to get these to pieces, I think it's fairly straightforward. There's a screw in the top here that holds this little kind of anvil piece on, and there's a couple of roll pins that need to be punched out. And I think with that done, they should kind of fly to pieces all over the workshop in a quite straightforward manner. So I think first off, I'll get this screw out, so I'll just get it in the vise, just so it's nice and steady. And then with that off, I think it's just a matter now of knocking this little roll pin out, and then all of this should come to pieces, I think. There is a spring in there which is likely to fly off and take my eye out, but it's probably a small price to pay for a working set of nippers. I'm just going to try and get a suitable size punch, and then just give this a couple of quick taps. There's another little pin in there. Just holds the tooth in. So I'm just going to flip that round 180 degrees Stick that back in. Just try and reassemble all of this. Now there's that little piece of angled metal there. I have no clue where that's come out from. Potentially it's just like a shim. Okay, so after a little bit of messing around, some mild swearing and 2 bouts of grueling around on the floor looking for springs and roll pins, I've got these back together and I've got this little tooth turn round and it all seems to be working okay. They're a little bit more rattly than they were initially. I'm not sure I've got that little bent bit of metal back in the right place, but they're working and that's all I'm bothered about. So now what I need to do, and I think I'll get them in the vise to do this, is I need to very carefully measure kind of where the end of my fret wire is going to be so that I can mark this little anvil, and I think I'm probably just going to cut this slot out with a Dremel just to make it quick and easy. I would imagine that this little component is hardened steel, so it wouldn't really be efficient to file it. Okay, and there's that little groove cut in. It's not my neatest would ever work. I'll probably clean that up a little bit with a file or something in a little bit. But first off, we're just going to test that it works. Now, I have had a go already, and initially I was making a right bloody mess of stuff, and then I remembered that I'm left-handed and these aren't. So if I just try it with my right hand. And I think you can see there, that's done a really nice job of that. So really, really happy with that outcome. A little bit of money saved. Nice useful tool. Now, these aren't exactly the best quality in the world. I don't expect them to last forever. But having said that, I don't actually fret that many guitars a year. And these cost me a little bit over £20. The StewMac ones are the best part of £70 in the UK at the moment, plus shipping and everything. So effectively, I can get 3 of these for one set of the StewMac ones. If they break after a year, so be it. I'd be quite happy to buy another set as long as the price hasn't gone up horrendously. So I'm going to call that a successful modification. I'm going to have a quick clear up and then we can look at the next little problem on the horizon, which is cleaning out the fret slots and cutting down those 2 little pins, which at the moment are going to stop us from getting our frets in. Okay, so next up is to kind of get these fret slots prepared, and there's a couple of things we need to do here. We need to address these little cocktail sticks that are blocking our progress at the moment, and there's also quite a lot of crud and junk that's accumulated in the corners here, and that will be a problem once we come to actually get these frets installed. Normally what I'd do is just run the fret slotting saw back through these slots and get it all cleaned out that way. However, obviously in this case, we've got some binding, so that's going to stop us. And I've had a little look at it and I can't even really kind of just work that in because there isn't enough room, and I'm going to end up damaging the binding, which I don't want to do. Now, there are specialist tools that you can buy to do this job, and in particular, there's kind of like a little saw affair that you can get. Crimson do one, StewMac obviously do one, and all it is a tiny little saw blade that kind of fits into your fret slot and you can clean it up. You can also get like a little hook to get right into the corner and clean that out. I obviously don't have one of those, and to be honest, I can't be bothered to wait for one either. So as we're messing around with tools this episode, I thought I'd see if I could have a go and make one. However, the first problem we got with that is that these slots are a very specific width and they have to be to hold the frets in properly. So I need to make my little saw blade out of something that is also a very specific thickness. And I've checked the saw that I use to cut these slots, and that comes in at about 0.4 and a bit millimeters. So I need a bit of metal that is about 0.4 of a millimeter. And where am I going to find such a thing? Good old-fashioned set of feeler gauges. So I'm going to have a look through these. These are really old and manky ones. So it really doesn't matter that I'm going to kind of lose one from this set, because these realistically are past their use as feeler gauges. So I'm going to have a sort through here, find the one that's the right size, and then we can have a look and see if it's going to be any good for this actual job. And luckily, I hadn't actually used the one that I want for anything else. And this one is, that's 0.4 of a mil. And that is kind of exactly what we want. However, it's completely the wrong shape. Now, the ones I've seen of these, they're kind of about that thickness, maybe a little bit thicker, and they're angled and they've got saw teeth cut into them. And what I'm also thinking potentially is that I could grind this into the shape I want to make a little hook type affair for getting right into those corners and getting any crud out of there that there might be. So it'll be kind of like a little double-ended tool. But the first thing I need to do is get this cut off at the angle that I want. Now this will be quite hardened steel. I'm not going to be able to cut that with a hacksaw, I don't think. However, I do think that I should just be able to cut it with these snips. If I cut it at an angle like that, that will give me a little bit of space to cut my saw teeth in. And all I'll use to do that is a traditional triangular saw sharpening file. So I'm going to get this into the other vise and we'll just see if we can get those teeth cut into it. And there we have the little saw teeth cut in there. It's probably not the neatest saw ever made, but it does fit in there and it does the job. That will clean out those fret slots really effectively. So I think that has kind of worked out really well. But I think the real acid test is going to be cutting down those two little bits of cocktail stick. If it will do that, I'll be a very happy man. So this is the first one. We'll give it a bash and see how it does. I might have benefited from slightly smaller teeth cut into this, and I think this whole thing will work a lot better once I fashion some kind of handle, but it has done the job. Let's cut right the way through that without causing any damage at all. So I would call that a resounding success. Happy days. So now that I know I can get those cleaned up effectively, I'm just going to go all the way up and down the fretboard now, just cleaning out those slots. Make sure there's no crap in there at all. It definitely does need a handle, but apart from that, I think it's actually working brilliantly. So that is a couple of successful little tool builds or adaptations that have helped me no end towards my goal of getting these frets installed, and will also make future fret jobs just that little bit easier, hopefully. So whilst we might not have got a lot done on the actual guitar, we have made some solid progress. And while we're on the subject of handmade tools, I've had a couple of inquiries about this little gizmo that I used last week to install the side dots on this neck. And to answer the question, yes, this is a tool that I made. I made it a little while ago, and I'll zoom in a little bit closer and explain exactly how it works. So you might just be able to see there's actually two holes drilled And there's also 2 little notches on the edge. Now, if you're putting in a single dot for all of the positions, basically, apart from the 12th fret, you just make a mark and you line that notch up with it, place that against the back of the fretboard, clamp it in position, drill your hole, job's a good 'un. And then when you get to the 12th fret, you actually just make the same mark in the center of the fret spacing and line it up with this central notch and drill both holes, and then you've got not only a really consistent distance between these 2 dots at the 12th fret, but you also maintain a really even distance between, depending on which way you do it, the back or the front of the fretboard, so that your dots all appear to be in a perfectly straight line, as they do in this instance. And this is simply just a little piece of aluminium angle that's just been cut down to the appropriate thickness there, marked up, and a couple of holes drilled in it. So a very straightforward build, but a really useful thing to have just to keep that consistency on the side dots. And it's little details like that for me that make all the difference and kind of add that final polish to your guitar builds. So with all that done, this fretboard is now ready, so we can start to prepare frets for it and to get those installed. But I'm not going to do that this time. I'll save that till the next episode. So as always, smash that like button if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.